No, voice is low.
Okay, welcome to the second half of RES811. This is our Zoom meeting to talk about synthesis and the remaining assignments in the class, and just to check in with how everyone is doing. So let's start with, how are you all doing tonight?
Good.
So what are some things that you want to talk about this evening? I'm hoping to keep this to maybe a 30-minute meeting, but is there anything sort of housekeeping-wise we need to talk about in terms of the class? And then the second part, we're going to talk about how to go from that Module 5 to the Module 7 paper and where you should be on the Module 8 assignment, okay? So housekeeping stuff first. What's going on?
I'm panicking.
Everyone's great?
Good. And I think Xavier did a fantastic job moderating until you got here. So.
Oh, wow. I'm sad I missed that.
We talked about everything from the Cowboys to the classes to,
you missed the whole stand-up routine.
Oh, dang it. Well, I think everyone's doing a pretty good job of acclimating to the class. How does it feel in your participation post to be using citations and references? How's that? Is it still awkward, or is it getting sort of second nature to you?
It's getting easier.
Yeah.
It is getting easier, but it's still harder to me, like the online post. Like when I find something online, that's my biggest struggle, is citing that. Not just citing it in the reference part, but citing it in the text. That's my hardest.
Okay, well, let me show you something really quick that'll help. And I like to tell students, guess what? Dr. Bridges does not have everything memorized about APA. I have a good deal of it. But when in doubt, I have this great tool. It's called Google. And here's something that, like, I have a couple of, chapter 6 of the APA manual is about crediting sources. That's imperative for you to read. If you don't have an APA manual at this point, please go buy one. They're not that expensive, and it will really benefit you throughout the rest of your doctoral program. It's not just about how to format citations and references. It has a lot of other useful information, particularly about how to show results when you get to your dissertation, and all sorts of great things that will be useful to you. So here's one thing that I like to Google all the time: table, if I can spell, 6.1 of APA manual.
Table 6.
And then just go to images. There it is. So this is what those citations should look like. If it has one author like Walker, and it's an in-text like citation, meaning you read it as part of the sentence, it should look like Walker 2007. Subsequent ones would be Walker 2007. And here's parenthetical form. It's not too big of a deal with works by one author, but let's look down here at like 3 to 5 authors. We just did Morse et al., and some students had some trouble with that. So you can see Bradley, Ramirez, Sue, and Walsh. So 4 authors. So if you're reading as part of the sentence, this is what it looks like. The subsequent citations are Bradley et al. So you don't have to write those other authors out after you've done it once. And here's what it looks like in citation form. Please note the difference between the use of ampersand, which is the and sign, in a parenthetical citation, and when it's read as part of the sentence, you actually write out the word and.
I was wondering. Okay.
I pointed that out to many students. Another thing that, are you good on the difference between a permalink and a DOI?
No, see, I'm confused about that too.
Okay, so there's a video in the classroom. I'm going to show you something in, let me go. Nope, let me get into this class here. And this is just going to be briefly. So there's a 3-step process about DOIs, and I have a video about it down here. I can post this in tomorrow's DQ1 if you'd like. I can repost it there. Let me make a note about that.
Thank you.
So you can find it again. This one down here, this embedded video, that is me going through this process in the GCU library. Okay, step by step.
Okay.
But quickly, for newer articles, we use a DOI. Well, anything that you retrieve online, you have to put a DOI if there's one available. Newer articles are going to have a DOI, and if you look at the PDF of the article on the very first page, either at the very top or at the very bottom in the footnote, there's going to be a DOI. Okay? If a DOI is present, you put it just like this. You can use this format, or the actual more preferable format looks like this, the HTTP, DOI.org, and then the DOI. Either of these formats is acceptable. I was talking about this with the class last night. As you can tell, that's why I still have this up. Either of these is acceptable. The more acceptable and the more preferred, the more current one is the one that makes it a link. Now, generally, when you put it on your references, you actually remove the hyperlink, but I'm not going to get that picky in this class. But the reason you do a DOI as a link is it makes it really easy for your readers to then use that link to go straight to a source if they want to look it up, okay? So what do you do if a DOI is not available on the PDF? What happens is older articles may have been signed and assigned a DOI retroactively, so it won't be on the old PDF, but they may have a DOI. What you do then is you go to this website called crossref.org. You go there, and since I have this example on this other piece of paper, we'll just say, what if we didn't have a DOI for this source? You can just copy your reference,
No stuff.
go to search metadata. Usually it shows up here, but make sure you're on search metadata. Paste it in there and give it a few seconds. And look, there's our article, right? And there's our DOI, and you'll see that it's in this HTTPS format. So you just copy it straight off of here, and you put it at the end of your reference.
That's pretty simple.
Easy peasy, lemon squeezy, right? So what if you look on the PDF, there's no DOI, you look it up in Crossref, you can't find it. That means it may not have a DOI. So you have to use, so we're going to assume for a second that this source, and we know that it has a DOI, but we're going to pretend that it doesn't. So what would we do? Well, you use retrieval from information. So what you would say is retrieved from, and here's where students make a mistake. They try to use a permalink, which has lopes in the URL. That shouldn't be necessarily on a reference, okay? So you'd use retrieve from, and then you would go find this Psychological Perspectives journal. Go over here. We're just gonna, you see how Google is your friend? So here's Psychological Perspectives. This is a link to the actual publishing journal. I'm going to give it a second, and it brings that up. So here people can go and find all the volumes and look that information up. So you just take that website, you copy it, and you paste it onto there. Okay? That's it.
Now, if there is a DUI that is available and we just don't happen to find it and we cited it as retrieved like that, are you going to dock us?
If I look it up and it has a DOI, yeah.
All right.
So the DOI should be on a newer article on the front page of the PDF. If it's not there, number 2, you go to Crossref and look. If you can't find it in either of those places, then you use retrieve from, but you make sure that retrieve from link is to the publishing journal and not a permalink. And we all know what permalinks are. Those are the little sources that help us get to our reading material in the classroom. We can see one if we go to Path, and we'll just pick anything right here, study materials. Here's an article. See that right there?
The one with low.
That's a permalink. it has lopes in it. A permalink just gets a GCU affiliated person and the link in the library. So that's why if we're publishing articles, we don't want to use a GCU affiliation link. But some of these assignments ask for a permalink, like the Module 8 Literature Review Resources assignment, because you're going to be using those. And if you need to get to that resource in a hurry, there's a separate field for that permalink. But that way it gives you an easy way of retrieving that article. Does that make sense?
Dr. Bridges, I've seen other students doing it as well, and I didn't know about the crossreference.org, but I've been basically looking the article up on Google, finding the DOI, and posting it on some of these that don't have it already. So this is a nice tool I didn't know about.
Yeah, and it's really the more scholarly way to go instead of Google Scholar, but you know, whatever tool gets you there. Now, my printable syllabus that I post in the classroom, that will give you, you'll notice like Morse et al. Last week, or Module 5, I think, it didn't have a DOI listed in the, I believe it was here. Okay, so you see this right here, by the way, dx.doi.org. That's actually now an APA error. The more preferable is the link that I showed you. You know, if you use this, no one's really gonna hassle you about it, but really the way you should be formatting them is like that, okay? Not with the DX. So it's okay, but really the most preferable one is this one, and those are the ones you can find on Crossref, okay? Just so you know. But one of those in the classroom, and I've been working with the curriculum department to clean up these errors. But if you use my printable syllabus, especially in the list where you're going to take the Module 7 paper, the enhanced synthesis paper, is this the resources? You see this is going to give you a permalink, but you notice that on their list there's no DOI. That's an error that the curriculum department made. I've corrected all of those and given it to them to fix in the classroom. It just hasn't been uploaded yet. So use my printable syllabus, and in all the things that I post in the classroom, I try to give you the correct, the ones with the DOI or the retrieve from information. So don't make those errors, okay? Any other housekeeping stuff like that before we talk about the Module 7 and the Module 8 assignments? I'm going to take your silence as a no. So not all of you have received your feedback from the Module 5 paper yet, and that's because, you know, I gave everyone an extension for Halloween. So I hope that helped you spend some time with your families. I want to talk to you just quickly about how we take that Module 5 paper and we turn it into the Module 7 paper, okay? So I go here and look at the enhanced synthesis paper. Actually, I'm going to stop this share for a minute because it's easier if I just tell you what I want, okay? So I'm going to post a template for the Module 7 paper and make sure that you, and in your feedback, I will talk about what it is I'm expecting. But just since I have you all here and I'm going to post this video, let me just go over exactly what it is that I want and what I'm expecting. Some students go wrong, and I hate it when they go wrong. So the Module 5 paper, you're going to take that exact paper, and you're going to look at my feedback, and you're going to update what I've asked you to update. And then there's this list of about 9 to 10 sources. You're going to choose 2 of them to supplement the argument you already have about doctoral identity, okay? And then you're going to write a reflection that goes at the beginning of the assignment, and it's reflecting on the overall writing process, okay? Let me see real quick in a different section, in a past section. I'll pull up that template, and I'll show you exactly what it is that I'm expecting. But I just want to make that clear. You're not writing a new paper about doctoral identity, just using those two new sources. You have to use, for every one of your three themes that you're providing, you still have to provide support from all three of those original articles. You're going to take the two supplemental, and you're going to try to enhance at least two of your themes. Okay? So if one goes really good on your second theme and one goes really great on your third, that's fine. If you can use two of them on one and then that's fine, and then one on the second one, that's fine. Just try to enhance your argument. And this is to simulate when you're doing your dissertation, you're going to get all kinds of feedback, and you're going to come across new articles that are going to change your argument. And so you have to be able to look at that writing process as an iterative process, right? You have to go back based on the feedback your committee gives to you, or if something new, a new development in your field. Okay, so I want to make that clear, and I put it in the feedback, and I put it in the classroom, and still I get students who do their Module 7 paper, and it doesn't have each of their articles, each of their themes doesn't have support from the three original articles, and it just tanks them on synthesis. So please don't make that mistake. Let me go find something really quick while I have you, and I'm going to just go through. Okay, I'm going to share my screen again. Now, this is a different section, so you won't see this in your class yet, but so you'll see the printable syllabus is there, but in my announcement for Module 7, you see how this is the choose two additional sources. When it says additional, that means in addition to the three original, right? And you'll see that the DOIs are there and the retrieval information is there if no DOI is available. I've corrected that stuff that is incorrect in the classroom. I'm sorry that I can't change the course shell, but these are the things that we're working with, right? So let me show you what my template looks like. You know you have to have a title page. And by now you should know how to format a title page, right? And it won't be named Enhanced Synthesis Paper. You're actually going to give it a name, and you should have done that in the Module 5 paper already. And so this is what the reflection looks like. It's going to be 250 to 300 words addressing your revision process. Okay, I want you to tell me, what was the revision process like for you? How did you address my feedback? How did you take those supplemental articles and choose which one you need to scan through a couple of them to see which one fits with the argument you're having. But like, how did you choose which ones you're going to use? Okay, and how did you strengthen your actual argument in this new paper? Well, not new paper, but this enhanced paper, okay? And going forward, how are you going to use this reflection process to improve your own doctoral identity or your doctoral writing? I just want you to think about those things.
Dr. Bridges?
Yes.
Are you going to want us to leave the word reflection as the title for that first paragraph?
That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah. So then you're going to have the title of the paper. Now I've put academic success relationships and then theme 3 because everyone might have a different third theme. But remember, I don't care in what order you present these themes. I have to do something. Like from the synthesis worksheet, they had to be presented in some order. So I've just chosen the one that's sort of the default. But if you want to talk about whatever your third theme is first, that's great. Do that. In which case, when you introduce the themes in your introduction, present the themes in the order that they are presented in your paper. Overall, you want to think about how do these three themes actually connect to each other and inform doctoral identity, right? So present them in the order that makes the most sense to present the ideas that you're trying to argue about. Okay? So in that introduction, to be clear, start with a hook, something that invites the reader into this topic, you don't need to necessarily start off right what doctoral identity is. Like, give a hook. Give something to, just like the articles that you're reading, they start off with something that's interesting that brings the reader in. No rhetorical questions anywhere in your paper. If a question is important enough for you to ask your reader, it's important enough for you to answer. Avoid sweeping generalizations. From the dawn of mankind, doctoral identity has been an often researched subject. No, it hasn't. Right? And it's not important to all researchers. It's not important to all readers. That's a sweeping generalization. Avoid those. Avoid Webster's dictionary defines doctoral identity as avoid that too. No dictionary descriptions. Gandhi once wrote that doctoral identity, nope, avoid famous quotations as well. And I know that we're all laughing about that. These are things that master students do, and it's perfectly acceptable at the master's level. And so when you try to bring it over to the doctoral level, it's a little awkward. We're starting with an academic tone, and it's a little different than what we're looking for. And I know that you've all experienced this in writing your Module 5 papers, right? The tone that we're doing is more about writing like you're writing a journal article. So in that introduction, give me a hook. Tell me what doctoral identity is and why it's important. Introduce those 3 themes and tell the reader why those 3 themes are important to doctoral identity. Okay? Try to avoid introducing the articles. I know that the assignment instructions actually describe the articles, and if you want to say Baker and Pfeiffer explored doctoral identity, blah, 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 that's fine. But you have to then tell me how those articles relate to doctoral identity. And that's where students sometimes get hung up on describing the studies rather than focusing on synthesis. If you didn't see the video by Dr. McCann about synthesis, I think most of you did. Didn't you find that really helpful to see examples of what synthesis is and what synthesis isn't?
Right.
Yeah. Look at these articles that you're reading. Do they say,
Yeah, that was great.
do they introduce all of the knowledge base that they use to form their argument? No. So I don't want you necessarily writing in that way. In your dissertation, are you going to introduce 300 articles before you tell someone what your study's about? No. And it's okay if you did it in the Module 5 paper. I'll give you corrections and things like that. But it's just, everyone struggles with synthesis. I was just telling this to my first Zoom meeting with the students in the first half of the class. Everyone struggles with synthesis. It's a whole new concept. You haven't been asked really to do it before. And so don't be offended when you get my feedback from the Module 5 paper. I don't mean to imply you're a bad person or a bad writer. I'm simply trying to help you get wherever you are to the next level. And all students get some feedback, okay? So don't feel like it's bleeding red. I actually try to put my comments in blue specifically to avoid that red bias. But they're really meant to, until you have someone point these things out, like your thesis is really broad and actually doesn't make a claim that's supportable. Until someone tells you that, you don't notice it, right? And we get very little feedback in our first couple of degrees about what a thesis should be and how it should integrate into our paper. So, as I said, in your introduction, going to start with a hook. The context is, what is doctoral identity? Why is it important? Introduce those 3 themes and tell me why they're important to doctoral identity. Finish your introduction with a strong thesis statement, something that's going to organize your paper. Don't repeat the themes in your thesis statement because you've already introduced the themes. Your thesis is the overall argument that you're trying to tell your reader about. And be sure that whatever your thesis is, you're supporting it in each of those 3 themes. That's why the themes are there, to support your overall claim about doctoral identity. And I've given you some information on that in your synthesis worksheets. I'll give you some more information on whatever your thesis is in your Module 5 paper. So if you don't have it yet, you will soon. I just want to make that clear in terms of structure. Each of those themes is there to support that claim. So if it's a really broad generic thesis, you can't support it, and it's really hard to structure an argument. In each of your themes, again, I don't care in which order that you provide them, in your very first topic sentence, I want to see a connection, say from academic success to doctoral identity, and not something generic like academic success is important to doctoral identity. My first question on that is going to be how and why, right? Why, what are we talking about when we talk about academic success? How are these expectations different at a doctoral level? In terms of relationships, some relationships are important to doctoral identity development. Why? How? Give me a brief introduction in that introductory sentence, in your topic sentence. Make sure that that's there. At the end of your first theme, connect that theme to the next theme. So in this case, if you were doing academic success and then relationships, you might say how academic success is related to relationships in order to move that reader at that last sentence to move them to the next theme, okay? If you started with relationships and then you had whatever your third theme is, make a connection at the end of that paragraph to move the reader to the next theme. That's called a transition sentence. Finally, in your conclusion, the very first topic sentence needs to reflect the thesis statement. Don't just copy and paste it. Reflect the overall claim that you're making. Then you're going to summarize your 3 key points from your themes. And finally, you're going to provide your implications for future research. You've just gone through a lot of information about doctoral identity. You've got some conclusions. So what needs to be done next? You've just explored this topic. What research needs to be done now? Because those are your conclusions, okay? And I know that you're not going to be incredibly great at it right now, those implications for future research, but I want you to start attempting that because you need to start, because when you get to your dissertation, that's a whole section and it's one of the hardest ones to write. Make sure that you have a reference page, and I'm going to stop the share real quick so we can just talk again. What questions do you have about the Module 7 synthesis paper? I want to make sure that we're all clear and on the same page about what it is that I'm expecting here. We're all good? One thing, if you haven't done it already in your Module 7 paper, a strategy for getting to that next level is to avoid author tags when you can. So author tags, does anyone know what those are real quick? An author tag? So if I said, according to Bridges 2018, blah, 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 that's an author tag. Bridges found, Bridges posited, Kelly reported. Those are author tags at the beginning of a sentence. It's better if you try and use parenthetical citations right now. It's not that you can't ever use an in-text citation, but the parenthetical form will force you to really focus on the sentence and the point that you're trying to make rather than the author of some other article. Start noticing that in the articles that you're reading. Look at how they use citations. Look at how they synthesize. Look at how they use the work of others to provide the justification for their need to do this study. And the intros to all of these and all of the empirical research articles that you read are a great example of how a gap is actually argued. So for your dissertation, you're going to have to find a gap, and then you're going to have to justify it. And the intros to any research article should be doing that. They should base it on previous research and then say, this has been done and this has been done, and make these connections. But this hasn't been found, and therefore this study is about this particular thing. So you can start looking at that in terms of thinking about finding a gap in your own research study.
Now, I've already chosen 2 articles to continue the writing on. It's Ernie, by the way.
Excellent.
And I have outlined those 2 articles. So one of the things that I like to do is that I chose an article by one of the authors that we've already written about.
Okay.
And I like that because I like to see how the author's ideas and concepts have changed. Is that desirables? Are we looking for that? But I also found an article that's a little contrasting. So I wanted to throw, you know, the maybe what the original author changed and then what a contrasting author said about it.
Great ideas.
Okay.
Do y'all want to talk about the Module 8 assignment?
Yes.
Yay! Okay, so if you haven't started on it yet, I hope you have been looking for articles for the Module 8 assignment. I want to be clear, the Module 8 assignment is the only one that doesn't have to do with doctoral identity. That assignment is about 5 articles that you find on your dissertation topic. And the reason we have you do this, you will be doing that same assignment in your first 3 classes, except in the second and third classes, you'll be finding 10 sources instead of 5. So you can start thinking about that now. And when you go to residency, you're qualified to go to residency after the 3rd class, your first residency. You're going to take those literature review resources assignments with you. So you want to make sure that those notes on those articles are really important. If in 6 months you came back and you read your note, would you know what was in that study without having to reread it? So let me go to the classroom real quick. I'm going to go to this section. And if you go to the discussion forum and go to Module 8, you'll see that I've already posted some information out there about the Module 8 Literature Review Resources assignment. If you click on that, I go through the final assignment and my tips for success, and I give you my template, just like I do for every assignment, okay? So you have to provide a reference, and that includes a DOI or retrieval information if appropriate. You have to provide, it's going to ask you for a permalink, but this should not be on the reference. I want to make that clear by looking at this template. You all can see my screen, right?
Yes.
Okay. So this first part should be a reference in APA format. You're going to have 5 of them. This second portion here, that's the permalink, so it's going to be that LOPES. If you get it from the library, you should be able to have a LOPES link, and you should be able to do, like, it will actually give you a permalink on the citation, right? And then in this section, you're going to have an annotation of 150 to 250 words. I give you a resource on evaluating sources, and then also some information, a tutorial on finding empirical research articles. You're going to do that for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different sources. Please go ahead and delete this out before you turn in your paper to me. And I know that correct APA formatting would say that this should be double-spaced, correct? But APA formatting is covered by the publication manual. This is not going to be published. So it's easier for me to grade if you single space it. So please single space it for me. That's why I give it to you this way. And I'd like for you to go ahead and give a title to your paper. And that's just to give me an idea of what it is you're working on in terms of your topic, so I can look at those. Now, each of these sources has to be an empirical research article. It can't be a book. It can't be a dissertation. No book reviews. Those sometimes look like articles, right? No book reviews, no literature reviews, no magazine articles, no technical reports, no conference proceedings, no encyclopedia entries. So real quick, what are the hallmarks of an empirical research article?
Peer reviewed.
1, it's peer reviewed. Okay, so you could check peer reviewed, but you might get something that's not an empirical research article, right, in the library? What else do we need to know to make sure that it's an empirical research article on our topic?
I'm going to say I'm supposed to know this.
Yeah, I would say you're
blank
supposed to.
right
You're in week 6. You've been using these on all of your DQ questions, right?
It has research.
Oh, who said that?
Leslie.
Leslie, you're my favorite person today.
Oh,
It's an article about a research study. That's the easiest way to tell. There should be a methodology section, right? Whether it's quantitative or qualitative, it's about a research article. And I tell you this because sometimes you might encounter a peer-reviewed journal publishing something that's a trade article or like what we call a white paper. So if I'm an expert on motivation theory, I might publish an article about something new that's happened in motivation theory, but I'm not actually doing an actual study. I'm simply telling my expert opinion about it. Okay? That's not an empirical research article. That's a white paper. And if you have an APA manual at the very beginning in chapter 1, it talks about different types of articles that might be published, okay? Now, you might come across a literature review or a meta-analysis, which looks like a synthesis of a whole bunch of research, but they're not doing a new study. Those also are really useful when you're learning about your topic. I encourage you to see if you can find a meta-analysis or a literature review on your topic for you to read, because it's going to give you all the really important names in that field. However, don't turn it in for this assignment because those are not empirical research articles. Now, many of the sources in our readings in this class are empirical research articles. You may not use any course material for this assignment because this should be on your dissertation topic. I'm the part of the justification for this is by module 8 you should be able to evaluate if something's an empirical research article, and you should be able to do a search in the library, and that's part of the grading for this assignment, just so you know. So no dissertations, no books, no theses, empirical research articles only. So hallmark number 1 is about a research article. It's about a research study. Now dissertations are about research study, but they're not peer reviewed.
Now, when you said delete, don't forget to delete. Were you talking about the example stuff?
Yes. Delete the example stuff from there. Give me just your 5.
Yeah, I just wanted to
Okay.
put that.
Yeah. Just delete those out for me. Just like everything in this class, I've given you instructions. Delete out those comments and all that before you give it to me. On your Module 7 paper, I don't want to see the things that I put in your Module 5 paper. Like, I assume that you've addressed those, and I'll be able to tell if you've addressed my comments. I don't need to see the comments. Okay, so we have these 2 assignments left. Any questions about the Module 7 Enhanced Synthesis paper or the Module 8 Literature Review Resources? While you're waiting on your feedback here for your Module 5 paper, go get to work on your Module 8 assignment if you haven't already.
Yep.
Questions, concerns?
Yes, ma'am. This
I
is
was really worried about not seeing my module 5 paper back, but I get it.
Anyone else?
Can you hear me?
Go ahead.
Yeah. What I struggle with is understanding if we haven't decided on our dissertation paper yet, which direction we want to go. What's the next step from there?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the very first part of that. What you struggle with is what?
If we haven't determined yet what our dissertation paper is going to be about, where can we get some guidance from that?
Oh, okay, yeah. So on the Module 8 assignment, if you're not sure, well, you're going to have to start sometime. So you should have a general idea about your topic area. Some of the things I've talked about in the dissertation discussion so far and are about your dissertation topic really has to match your degree plan. So you shouldn't be talking about leadership organization if you're in a psychology program for cognition and instruction. Leadership theory is not going to really fly. You'll need a psychology theory. If you're in business, then you need some sort of business theory. So make sure that it's in your general area. And the only way to start finding a topic is when you're going to find something that you're interested in, that relates to your dissertation, relates to your degree plan, and then start reading. Now, at this point, I don't expect that you have a topic narrowed down, but you have to start reading, because in order to spot a gap in the literature, which is the number one step in starting a dissertation process, you have to first be a subject matter expert on the literature. The only way to do that is to go dive into the literature and read and read and read and read. So the 5 articles that you annotate may not be the first 5 articles you encounter. I'd like for you to sift through those as best you can. But to address your question directly, I'm not going to know exactly what your dissertation topic is. So do something that makes sense for you, and get out there and start doing some library searches. If you haven't done that yet, go sign up for a library seminar. They will walk you through how to do a search and how to use key terms. But start with a general area. If you had a thesis for your master's degree and you want to continue that line of research, then start there. Does that help?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, good. Other questions?
I had planned on I never planned on doing a qualitative dissertation. I was hoping to get away with something quantitative.
Well, let me tell you right now. Let me walk you through these steps, because I actually have dissertation students. Until you have research questions, don't worry about choosing your methodology. Once you have research questions, they will determine the methodology you use. So don't be scared like, oh, I'm scared of statistics, so I don't want to do quantitative, or I really am scared of doing qualitative. That doesn't matter. Those are tools. So I do both kinds of research, and the thing is, they're just tools. So if I want to hammer in a nail, I can do so with a hammer. I can also do so with my shoe. One of those is a more effective means to get the nail hammered into the wall, right?
They'll both work.
So you don't start a task like, I need to rake the leaves out of my yard. You don't start by saying, I really like spoons and I'm scared of using rakes. And that's what it's really like. That's where you guys are right now. It's okay to be like, oh, I'm scared of the statistics. You'll get a statistics class and you can go look up more about that, and you'll gain knowledge in this as you go. So don't decide that yet. You might have a preference or a leaning, but your research questions decide that. Goal number 1, find a gap in the literature. You will not be able to spot a gap in the literature until you've read enough information on your topic to know what the literature is about, so that you're an expert and you can see where that literature hasn't been developed. Once you find a gap in the literature, it will suggest a specific problem. That will be your problem statement. Based on your problem statement, you'll write a purpose statement to address that problem. And the purpose statement will help you write your research questions. And once you have research questions, everything else will be written into them. So who your population is and how you're going to go get data from them will all be included in your research questions. If there's one thing you can say Dr. Bridges said about, Dr. Bridges will tell you, your research questions guide all aspects and all decisions of your research methodology once you have research questions, okay? Your goal right now is looking for a gap. I don't expect you to have one. But I have posted a couple of times a good video by Dr. Mall about how to find a gap. And finding a gap is really difficult, and it is an argument. It is just like the intro of all of these studies, where they are arguing for why their study needs to be done and justifying it. That's what your gap in the literature needs to look like. I can give you an example if you'd like from my own research.
Please.
Okay. So some colleagues and I, when I was in my doctoral program, we were teaching at the undergraduate level. And so we were already professors and we were talking. And one of the things that irked us were students who put everything, undergraduate students who put clearly put everything off until the last minute, and they were doing things like at 3 o'clock in the morning the day before something was due. So procrastinating. None of my students now do that, do they? You all are great planners. You never procrastinate. You're just champions. So procrastination is a big topic. Well, I could procrastinate my laundry, but maybe not in my dissertation, right? So it's context specific. So we were interested in academic procrastination. And so we read everything we could, and we found that it was studied in qualitative studies and quantitative studies, and we looked at how it was measured. And what we found was most often in the measurements of procrastination, I might give you a Likert scale. On a scale of 1 to 5, everyone here tell me in this class, how often do I, and list a whole bunch of behaviors. 1 being never or not very often, and 5 being like all the time, right? And you guys would answer from on a scale of 1 to 5. So it's very easy to distinguish who's a big procrastinator by looking at their scores on that, because they have a lot of 5 answers, right? But what about those people who have an answer of 1? Well, if you procrastinate just a little bit, you might answer 1. But if you never procrastinate, like all of my doctoral students would say, you would say you never procrastinate, you would also answer a 1. So here's a case where I have 2 students both answering this question the same way, and I can't tell them apart, but I know they're different. This student never procrastinates. This one does it a little bit. That's a gap in the literature. It suggests the problem that there is a measurement issue when it comes to measuring academic behavior such as procrastination. Therefore, the purpose of our study was to propose a new model of academic behaviors which showed procrastination on one end and timely engagement in the other. And the academic behavior is a continuum from those 2 extremes. So you can't measure procrastination without measuring timely engagement. That's how you write a purpose. And so then that showed our research questions. I'd be more than happy to give you the reference for the publication that we came out with. Really fascinating study. And one of the great things that came out of it, because I was always one of these people that said, I need to put things off a little bit because I do better when I have this time pressure. Well, there's actually research out there that shows we lie to ourselves when we say that. So you would actually do better if you do a little bit at a time and plan out your work rather than procrastinating. And I will say I'm one of the ones that lied to myself the most. Oh, I really need to be super stressed to do well on an assignment. Surprisingly, when I'm not super stressed, I actually do much better in my writing.
I'm trying to get rid of stress now.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I don't procrastinate. I fit stuff into my schedule.
That's excellent. I can tell you, don't look for big chunks of time. They don't exist anymore, right?
Like tomorrow, I've got a 15-hour day ahead of me.
Oh, yeah.
I had a 12-hour day today, so I got to fit in my last participation response tonight before I do my 15-hour day.
Yeah.
So,
And find those places where you have small amounts of time. I had students who had a big long commute, so they got they would get PDFs, they'd load them onto their phone, and they had a PDF reader on their phone so that while they were traveling, they could have the phone read the article to them, so they could get in research time and listen to these things while they were driving for an hour. Anyone who lives around Phoenix around here knows about long commute times.
Or Austin.
Oh, I lived in Austin too a long time ago. I loved it.
I listen to mine a lot.
So you're on campus, Dr. Bridges?
I am.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I'm in Prescott Valley, so.
Okay,
Yeah.
excellent.
that's where I was today, Prescott Valley.
Oh, you're in Arizona too.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and stop recording now, but you guys feel free to stay and talk.